ready.
We need one more.
We're short. We're short.
All right. Oh, he says that. He says that. Whatever, 42 for each.
We don't have to worry about it in the budget.
All right, we're back. I'd like to first welcome everybody to our second budget workshop. Before we get started, I'd like to make sure that I thank staff. Thank staff in advance for all your hard work. The manager, your team has done a great job in preparing the commission and everyone here in regards to what we're trying to do today. And we're trying to get across the goal line for this year. Before we get started, I want to introduce somebody who had the pleasure of meeting 5 minutes ago in the lunchroom. Please stand up and come to the podium. No, the podium, not up here. You're not taking my space yet. I have a little bit of time left here. Let me just finish it up. Maybe you can run for fours or mana, but I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere just yet. All jokes aside, can you tell us your full name, please?
Sarah Prieto,
Where do you go to school?
UF.
What year are you in?
Well, I'm going into my sophomore year.
Don't give me your home address, but where do you live? What city?
Coral Gables,
What are you studying?
finance.
And what are you doing here in the City Beautiful right now?
I really just, well, right now I'm doing Excel sheets to.
Well, what are you doing? What program are you? What program are you in?
Oh, the finance department.
But you're in an internship program, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how long have you been here for?
Like a couple weeks now.
Okay. So the reason why I brought her up here because Ms. Cabrera and I were having coffee with Solange right now on the break, and I had the pleasure of meeting her, and I was introduced to her by Surami Cabrera, and it reminded me of how blessed we are to be in the position that we are. If you get a chance and you see somebody young and you can instill a little bit of wisdom in them and you can build them up, like hopefully this is building you up today because you're seeing that we're approachable and that one day you're going to be up here running the city as a city manager, city attorney, city clerk, or as a director, or as a mayor, or as a commissioner or vice mayor. If you're crazy enough, the world is your oyster, and we're blessed to have you. So take a seat and enjoy, hopefully one day, which will be your career in finance.
Thank
Okay?
you. I
We're blessed to
appreciate
have
it.
you.
By the way, when you asked her, what are you doing here? She answered better than probably most of us would have
Excel
answered right
spreadsheets.
now. What are we doing here?
Excel spreadsheets.
Yes. That's what Keith does.
It's funny you say that because I was having a conversation with Tsunami there in the coffee room, and when we asked that question, Excel spreadsheets, and she laughed the same way. I was like, this is great. This is great. So after that, I just, again, like to reiterate, and I try to say it as much as I possibly can. Thank you. This has been a long journey. I know we're only about halfway through, but thank you so much for everybody for your hard work today and for your leadership and for always putting the city of Coral Gables first. So thank you. Much appreciated. Keith.
Thank you very much. Keith Kleiman, Assistant Finance Director for Management and Budget. If we can have the slideshow up. Thank you. All right. let's get to the first slide. One thing I'd like to say, so this budget is built on all known revenue estimates through the last week in June. So nothing after that. So let's keep that in mind. The first slide is the budget calendar. You can see it starts, for the majority of the people, it starts in May. For us, it starts in February. There's a lot of background stuff that we do to get things started, starting with budget training, and then the departments kicking in and working with us to develop all of their budget scenarios. So June 1, the property appraiser sends the estimated property values. That's what this budget is built on. July 1, the budget estimate submitted to the commission. July 1, the property appraiser certifies preliminary taxable values. That's the next estimate. July 1 to July 14th, the state revenue estimates are finally available. They've been getting later and later each year. It would be nice if they had it before June, but unfortunately we don't get that. So you can see where we are right now. The next step is August 4th, where we certify the tax rate. You'll be voting on a tentative tax rate. This is not the legal adoption of it. It's just adopting a tentative tax rate so we can submit it to the property appraiser. We'll have 2 budget hearings this year. The first one on September 13th, which is my birthday, and ironically, the meeting changes, my birthday changes, it always ends up on the same day. I cannot figure it out. So September 28th will be the second. All right. The first slide, this is all funds. The annual revenues are estimated at $216.7 million. The transfers from reserves, which is all planned use, nothing from the 25% reserve, is $13.4 million. Total revenue budget is $230.1 million. Expenditure side of the house. Operating is 190.5, almost 0.6. Capital is $26.3 million. Debt service is 11.4, for a total expenditure operating budget of $228 million. Then we have transfers to reserves of $1.8 million for a balanced budget of $230.1 million. Revenue increases affecting the budget. You can see there's some large numbers here, and thank God for that, because we have tremendous amount of expense that we have to balance the budget with. So the top number, almost $7.4 million, is for property tax. We all know it's a good, large number. The good thing is, Carl Gables has still remained in the lower, I think the bottom 4 of percentage increases for the county. And that's where we want to be. And I know, Mayor, you and I have been talking back and forth about how much money is coming in, and I'm going to say we can split the baby here because you're right, there was a lot of money that came in. But the other side of the coin is what we have said is still the case, and thank God it is. We are, I think, number 4 for the county and lowest, which is where we really want to be. We don't want to be with this huge number that we can come crashing down.
So, and if I may just add, again, I'm going to say it again because people are watching the budget. Yes, a lot of money's come in as a result of property values, but the cost of maintenance, construction projects are up 20, 30%.
Right.
So a lot of that profit that's coming in is being eaten up along with the last 2 years of COVID, which we're still recovering in certain fronts from that. So let's be honest with ourselves about how much money is really available.
And Mayor, we're also very fortunate we have a stable city that doesn't lower very much either.
Yes.
So we have stability.
Yes.
We have a slide actually that we put in for this year, which actually indicates where all the money went. Usually we show where increases and decreases happen, but this time we actually match the net increases to exactly what happened in the expenditure budget to show where it went specifically. So we'll get to that slide in a few moments. Okay, so revenue increases, 7.4 for property tax. Country club fees, that's the difference between what we initially budgeted in FY22 and what we're budgeting for FY23. There's many unknowns, as we all know, with the country club. We are hoping it's going to be a successful proposition for us. Right now, we're budgeting just the amount of revenue we need to cover their expenditures. In theory, we could actually budget much more if what we're thinking is correct, but we don't want to do that. So we're keeping it down to just what the expenditure budget is, and hopefully it'll be balanced. If it does not, it will fall into the general fund and be balanced with the general fund at the end of FY23, as it will in FY24 as well. Okay. Intergovernmental revenues, increase of $1,068,000. It's all grants mostly. Permit fees, $933,000. That's for the building department, and it goes into their reserve. Parking fees, up $784,000. The majority of that, as you'll see, is going to go into a reserve to build the budget toward the debt service necessary for the mobility hub. So we're planning that and not necessarily just using it for something. It's being planned and it's going into reserve. Okay, franchise fees, $515,000. A portion of that is still a little bit of recovery from the pandemic. And then the upper portion of that is actually the trend that was happening before the pandemic started. And the next one, stormwater fees, $445,000 is strictly for sea level rise. Okay, investment earnings up $388,000, general government fees $365,000, and so on. The total net just increases alone $15.4 million. And please keep that number in your head because we're going to come back to it as we talk on the expense side. But 15.4 is where we're sitting right now with just increased revenues. Now, you all recognize this slide from prior years. We're showing the decreases to the budget. Now, we always say that most of these items are one-time items that normally would not be in the budget. They're not counted as recurring. So it does it sort of muddies the comparison of increases to decreases. Then you can see here, if you net the $15.4 million increase to the total revenue decreases of $49 million, you're showing a decrease of 33.4. Okay, now that is because what typically happens in any budget document is you compare the amended current year budget to the adopted of the next fiscal year. Okay, however, the amended budget has one-time items in it. So this year, and we'll probably continue it on, we've added another slide that takes the same information. You'll see that the first column shows the $42 million. We're going to pull out those one-time items, and we're going to show you that the total revenue decreases is only $456,000 of recurring. Okay? So now if you take that and compare it to the 15.4 of increases, the net amount is exactly $15 million of increased revenues for the year. Okay? Now, on the expenditure side, we've done something similar. We'll get to that slide as well. On the personal services side, salaries 3.2, employee benefits, the retirement $500,000, FICA 301, health and the post-retirement plan 1.2, and the total increases on the personnel side is $5.27 million. Now, the next slide also has one-time items in it. So you're going to see here the total of these one-time items, it comes out to $1.2 million on the expenditure side. Professional services is up 1.3, repairs 1.1, parts and supplies 2.4, and then there's a whole list of negative numbers, okay? Those negative numbers are reappropriations from prior years, okay? So now if you take a look at the bottom, you're going to see a net change in the operating budget of $6.5 million. Once again, that is sort of muddied by leaving the one-time items in there. So we're going to go to the next slide and show you what happens. So there's the same information in the first column. There's your 6.5 at the very bottom. If you pull out 3.9, almost $4 million worth of reappropriations, you're going to see the difference is really $10.5 million increase to the expenditure budget. Okay? We're going to show you how that breaks down, but that's a very key thing to know because the one-time items they muddy the waters when you're looking at this type of comparison. Okay? The allocation of revenue increases. Salaries, that's the same 3.2 you saw on the previous slides. FICA 300, I rounded the numbers just to make it simpler. Health and OPEB, that's 1.2. Pension is 500,000. General liability premiums, $1 million. You know, that's a big hit for us. High priority new needs, almost $2.9 million. These are must-haves for the city. This isn't just nice to have, these are must-haves. I would say 50 to 60% of that is IT alone, just to continue with all the upgraded systems that we're maintaining, as well as the safety of the city for penetration purposes. Okay, grants and operating, $125,000. Motor pool, fuels and parts, $1 million. That is the first time we have increased their bottom line budget in literally years. We were always a little over budgeted in fuel, just to be on the safe side. But right now, as you know what happened with fuel, this is where we are right now. So now
May I
you
ask
see
you- may I ask
total
you-
operating budget.
May I ask you a quick question just on that point? Because every time that we have the fleet director here, we've been really moving in an aggressive fashion towards EV vehicles on multiple fronts. I think we're actually leading the county when you think about
I think so.
cities per capita.
Right.
I think we have the largest fleet, from what I've been told. Have we, as we've reduced gas vehicles, have we kept like a cushion there to make sure that, again, that we can kind of budget for as prices continue to escalate and or fluctuate, that we're not caught off guard?
Well, let me bring Steve up. Where you going? Come up.
Steve, last year you got a reprieve, man. I didn't call you up. This year, I want to ask you what's going on with EV. Are we still buying more vehicles, or are we kind of?
We're still investing in EVs.
Okay.
We're still replacing EVs. We have 5 bolts coming in. Some of the bolts are replacing the older gem cars that police have.
Yep.
We're still investing in that, but the thing is, it's not just how much vehicles we have, it's what's the utilization. So generally, the utilization of the administrative fleet is much smaller than it is of the largest gas consumer, which is PD. So you're not going to see a significant change, even though we have a lot more EVs. But for this year and for all subsequent years, we're starting to invest in the hybrid police vehicles.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Correct. Every vehicle that we order now, the SUVs, are hybrid. With the limited, we only have 3 right now in service, but we did some calculations, and based upon that, we're getting anywhere from 40% to 50% better gas mileage on those hybrids. So once we start implementing those in the fleet, we'll start seeing significant change in the gas. As far as diesel's concerned, there's really nothing out there on the market for large, heavy trucks to reduce the fuel consumption. So
We were trying with the trolley. The manager and I rode one last year. The trolley worked incredibly well. It was fully electric, but then we found out it was made in China. So we both got off the trolley and we walked away.
like
It
800,000.
was made in America, but the company was owned by a Chinese company. So basically, they were trying to skirt the system
All right.
by making it here.
Most of the
one-
drive
Yeah,
components
I
are
have
made in
one
China.
question. I have one question for you and for the police chief. Again, sustainability is incredibly important for everybody here on this commission, but we will never skimp on public safety. Public safety is number one. I've been asked by so many people that see other municipalities. I don't know of anybody here locally, but in other states, and they've sent me articles about, look, they're moving in the direction of 100% electric cars, Teslas, and those type of vehicles. Do you think that we can, with the small footprint that we have as a city, do you think that we can, if we have a car that has a mileage of 350, 400 miles, that we could potentially have an actual 100% fully electric police vehicle?
I'll take any Tesla they want to give me. I do believe we can, Mayor. I think the issues that we have to confront and obviously deal with is obviously as a take-home car. I would have a hard time letting someone take it home and then have to be responsible to charge it so it's fully charged. So we would have to run it the same way we're going to run the Volt fleet, if you will, for the neighborhood safety aids, because they have take-home cars. However, I do believe for a downtown unit, something like that, that is something that we can put, whether some bike officers, we can work something out. In other words,
And Mayor, I
I'm
think
willing to look at
one of the
that.
things that concerns me is if we have a hurricane or have something like this,
100%.
how do we have, there has to be a percentage of both. Because we can't use our generators to charge, our generators are really to run the public safety building. So, and our fuel. So it becomes an issue as to how do we deal with it when we have power outages and things like that. So we try to keep a balance of electric versus gas to make sure that we can be effective in case we have to activate DOC, which is usually the case of a hurricane.
Like, for example, I'm not saying under any circumstances that I would move a majority of our police fleet to a fully electric. I would never do that, again, because you're talking about redundancy. But technology is ever evolving. Now they're talking about hydrogen cars and all those kind of things that are coming in the next 5 or 10 years, which are pretty interesting in the technology. If you get a chance, read about hydrogen. But that's a ways out, even though there are already cars that exist in hydrogen. But I would love to see, if possible, and my colleagues agree, to have maybe 1 or 2 police cars be 100% electric and be monitoring it downtown like the police chief said. It wouldn't compromise us in regards to a hurricane, and I think it sends a strong message. You know, we're on the cutting edge. We talk about everything that Raimundo's doing, everything that we're doing in regards to his department, what we're doing in public works, what we're doing here as a city, what police, fire doing, all the different investments we're making in regards to infrastructure and technology. I think that's the next natural step to continuing to evolve as a city.
I actually did some analysis on some of the
Doesn't
cities.
surprise me.
Right. And, like Newark City, they're going to order 150 Ford Mach-E's. Remember, keep in mind that those Mach-E's, those vehicles right now are not police pursuit rated, or police rated for accidents. The vast majority of those are going to go to detectives and people who are just doing non-patrol issues. One of the issues you're going to have is that if you wanted to start, once the technology is there for the range, the issue is going to be is that all the vehicles are take home. So the officer, if he comes in, he's either going to have to sit either before or after his shift starts and charge the car, or the city's going to have to pay for a charger at his personal residence to charge the vehicle. Because either or, we have a large, very large, substantial pool fleet, which the officer at the end of his shift then would have to change out into a car that's fully charged. So there's a lot of things to look at. And then you got we've heard all the problems with EVs catching on fire during charging, the bolts in particular.
But I think that's sporadic. Listen, I drive an electric car. I'm waiting for a new one to come in. It should be coming in. It's stuck at the dock, like everything else. And that's not. I mean, it's happened. It's happened. But a lot of it's not common. It's not common.
It would have to be a method where the officers can park the car for a significant period of time to charge the vehicle.
Depends on if you totally drain it. I mean, I've had a vehicle that is a hybrid plug-in for 6 years. And I plug it at my house, I barely see a dip in the electric bill or increase. But I think there's a lot that we can do here and not just constantly be concerned about how long it takes necessarily to charge it, because if you, just like you have phone allowances, you can have electric, charging allowances. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that police vehicles do more than any other vehicles is idle. You're sitting on site, and what are you doing? Running that engine, burning fuel, when all you really need is a battery for the air conditioning and for the equipment. So when you have a hybrid vehicle, at least in that instance, you have the best of both worlds. You don't need to be sitting there with the engine running. You can have all the air conditioning and computer equipment running in the meantime. And yes, I'd like to see everything without a tailpipe on it, but then we do need to have that balance. And I would like to follow up with you on the garbage trucks. Other cities are using them.
I didn't hear you.
Garbage trucks. I'd like to follow up with you on garbage trucks.
On garbage
Sometimes, it's been some time since I revisited the issue of, I think Hayward was the company that was doing garbage trucks, and a lot of cities are using them.
Referring to electric garbage trucks?
Yeah.
There are some, I know there's a demo out there, but I haven't seen any results as far as the utilization. Once again, if you start getting garbage trucks, the amount of time to charge, of course, everything changes over time.
Chicago did it years ago. Because they stop and start so often, they regenerate quite a bit of electricity during the stopping process.
The generating capacity would have to be significantly increased at Public Works. I mean, the garbage trucks parked there overnight, if they can charge. And then again, if we lose generator power and then we lose capacity to obtain fuel, which is a possibility if we get a major strike, that we might not even be able to get fuel. Now you have garbage trucks sitting idle because they can't charge.
Yeah, well, again, I'll revisit it. Other major cities like Chicago have done it. So,
I'd have to check in. Chicago's got electric.
as I recall, it was. I'll dig up my research and We'll spend a little time together on that, because they did say that's one of the vehicles that is most feasible because of the number of stops and starts you get. It has more stops and starts than your trolley
Right.
system. Every house.
Quick
What is
question.
that? I'd love to explore. I'd love to explore that. I mean, again, look how far we've come in 8 years from not even having any electric cars here in the city to now we have, you know, an incredible fleet along with a major charging network. So we're moving in the right direction. I would like to see. I would like to see a police car at a minimum, if not two, fully electric. I think it reduces the downtime because you don't need to change the oil, air filters. Again, you're not idling. So if we could check into that maybe by the next budget meeting, I'd like to see if we have a possibility of doing it in any way.
I have a quick question. I think it's a great idea. I'd like to see that, you know, rolled out when possible. But I was thinking of police cars. I know Teslas go, you know, 0 to 60 in a blink of an eye.
Right.
Do all police cars need to have a certain performance level, or are there different types of police cars you use? Because I figure not all electric cars have the performance of a Tesla. So I'm trying to figure out if that would be, electric would be applicable to all police cars or certain kinds of police cars?
Well, yes, to answer your question, there is police rated, and they're built specifically for police patrol cars. Right now, our fleet is Ford. We went from the sedan, which was the old Taurus, to the Explorer now. We see that that's probably our most optimum use because of the storage capacity it has, also for prisoner holding, officer comfort, and safety issues as well. So what I believe, and I think the mayor was going down this road for the first time, and this is really a question of economics. The GEM cars that we use or that we need for 8 hours cost more if we were to do that than the police fully outfitted car that we buy for the officers. So again, we're transitioning into the Bolt because as much as we liked having the golf cart look, if you will, it's just not feasible. It's not economically sound. I do believe, and keeping off the top of my head in accordance with our contract with the FOP, I believe, to the mayor's point, we could look at in a pilot type program of having our downtown units in these electric cars. Because what I would really like to see is what kind of battery usage we have over a long time with as much electronics that we would have to have on an electric vehicle. Whether it be a Tesla or not, I know some departments have had issues with electronics on the Tesla that they've been testing. So we could kind of run that down. The officer would still have their car to go back and forth. We do have some units that have both motorcycles and cars, so we can continue through the rain. So I think we can probably look down that road to see what is it we're seeing in Coral Gables. But more specifically, we can reduce the carbon footprint downtown if we have 1 or 2 or 3 of those cars working when they are working at that time, whether it be evening or afternoon. Then we could charge them in our facilities and also have the officers drive home in their own cars. So I think we can baby step through this.
And there are certain other things you have to consider. Right now, the Tesla and the Ford Mach-E, there's other companies coming out with, but nothing is pursuit rated, nothing is crash tested. To police standards. In addition, the manufacturers of the cages and the laptops and the center consoles have not caught up with the vehicles. So there's nothing out there in a Tesla or the Mach-E to put a cage in the back. So that then becomes another issue. Once again, it's all still developing, and we just have to wait till
So
it comes
that's why it
about.
would be maybe early on, a particular type of car that you use, not maybe applicable to all of them.
Correct. The electronic draw, so right now, police packages, their alternator systems and battery systems are bigger than something you get off the street on a regular market, only because we're running the police radio, the computer, the lights, the sirens, along with that, and then running, as you said, Commissioner, where they're idling, all of that has to be on at the same time as well. So the ebb and flow of what the battery life would be something else, but I do believe we should take a look at it.
I agree. Thank you.
I love it. So you'll come back by the next meeting and just kind of give us a little bit more information about the possibility?
Yes.
Also, Mayor, when we build Menorca Garage, which we're building already, they'll give us a little flexibility as far as parking, which we're tight right now, but we won't be by the first quarter of next year. As you know, the precast is already going up.
Thank you. Thank you for the information. I appreciate it. Keith, sorry we took over your meeting. I apologize.
When it comes around to electric vehicles, that will overtake your meeting.
I made a promise myself that I would never buy another gas vehicle, so what I have right now will be my last one. My next one will be electric.
Yay.
Good. Okay, so we were discussing now, where did that $15 million went? So you had that number in the back of your heads, that's the 15, the net increase, net change to the revenues. Well, this slide tells you everything. So I think we got down to the total operating budget. It's almost 10.3. That matches what we showed on the previous slide. Then if you look at capital and debt, you can see the changes that we had to cover there. And that's another 4.6. So that brings us up to the $15 million of revenue that we brought in. Again, a lot of this is due to, honestly, the inflation rate. You can look at the operating budget, and almost everything there is due to inflation plus new needs that have to be addressed. The next slide was actually requested by the chairman of the Budget Advisory Board. We put it in, I think, a year or two ago, and he wanted to see the total cost of labor. So you see his total salaries, total benefits, and then a percentage of that department's operating budget. And you can see from some of these numbers how hands-on the city really is. Most of the services are given directly by city employees. Now we have a 10-year classification comparison. And let's look down at 2022 and 2023. You can see on the general employees in 2022, it went up to 522. Now, those were budget amendments brought to the commission. There were 2 mechanics, I believe, for 2 grants for the trolley. And the rest of the increase for FY22 was for the country club. And that happened, I think, 2 or 3 months ago. Now, in 2023, there's a net change. If you look at firefighters and general employees, there's 1 more captain, and we're going to go over the details of all the different increases. And then there's another 10 general employees that are needed for FY23. The total full-time budget will be 866 headcount for full-time. This next slide is also a new slide because we've been trying in the past to keep the increase in headcount down to 1 or 2 employees per year, if that. This year, there's 11, and we need these 11. So if you look at the full-time piece of this slide, code enforcement officers, there's an increase of 2. IT analysts, 2. Body-worn camera staff, 1 police officer and 2 reviewers. Fire captain for communications. And maintenance worker 2s, that's for public works. That's an increase of 3, but we actually are saving money there. We're decreasing a contractual staff, which was not working out, and this saved us about $50,000 a year. On the part-time side, we have a fire inspector to enhance the fire inspection program. Capital projects, I'm going to read out just the subtotals. If anyone has a question, we have Public Works, Parks, all the directors are here that can answer specific questions. Therefore, capital equipment, $2.8 million. For facility repairs and improvements, $1.8 million. Historic facility repairs and restorations, $4.2 million. Motor pool equipment, $3.5 million. Parking repairs and improvements, almost $1.3 million. Parks and recreation repairs and improvements, almost $2.5 million. Public safety improvements, $1.4 million. Transportation and right-of-way improvements, almost $3.3 million. And the last section would be utility repairs and improvements, and that's $9 million, for a total capital budget of just under $30 million. That's quite impressive. The 10-year property tax millage rate schedule, We're proposing 5.559. It'll be the 8th consecutive year that we've maintained the same millage rate. Now, this slide shows the estimated average taxable value of a homesteaded property at $741.6 thousand dollars. And we have capped it at 3%, because even though if you actually do the math, I believe that 741 is higher than 3%. It's a number we get from the property appraiser, and it's a blended number. There's new construction in there, there's additions, so you can't look at it from a person who truly is just a homesteaded person with no improvements. Their numbers would be less. But this is the best we can get. This is what we get from the property appraiser. Okay? So if you look at that, apply the 5.559 to that amount, the Carl Gables portion of the property tax would be $4,123, and that's an increase over the prior year of $120. Now, if you take that same $741,000 value and apply the millage rates from the other full-service cities, you can see at the very bottom line where the same property would be in Miami, Miami Beach, and Hialeah. Key Biscayne, obviously, is the one city that has a lower millage rate than us, so that's a full-service city, yet they are moving up. You know, we've followed this for the last 10 years or so, and they started in the 2s in the millage, and you can see they're consistently going up.
And I think they're having, again, the city manager is a good friend, and I think they're having some other considerations this year. I think they were floating a bond, and they were talking about some other issues that they may have to raise.
Fire, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay, so Coral Gables properties by type, 53% are homesteaded, 31% are non-homesteaded. Commercial is 8.8, and all others at 5.1. That's just the number of properties, and that's the split. Now, getting to the actual revenue that we're getting in from property taxes, it's about $103 million. And you'll see at the homesteaded property brings in 45.4, non-homesteaded 29.2, and 20 million and 8.3 million for the commercial. Now, this is similar information, just in a different version. Some people like the bar chart better. So you get to see just 1 year, and you can see the same numbers for homestead at 45.4, and commercial at almost 20, non-homesteaded at 29, and so on. The 10-year municipal millage rates for full-service cities. And we stand in the same place we've always been. We are second to lowest, with only Key Biscayne below us. Now, here we are in comparison to all the cities in Miami-Dade. We are maintaining our position as number 11 lowest millage rate in the county. You can see the blue columns are the full-service cities, and the green ones are the partial service cities. My favorite slide of all. And you can see Coral Gables, for every $1 of taxes, 29 cents goes to the city, 31 cents goes to the county, 2 cents goes for regional, and 0.38 goes to the school board. And just want to say this, and I've said this before, when people need services, where do they come? They come to the city. So that 29 cents is getting them all of their services. How often do you find yourselves going to the county? So it's just, this is actually a pretty good buy if you think about it for the money. The annual pension contributions. Now, this is part of the program we've had in place now, I think 2016 or 2017. For FY23, the required payment is $21.6 million. You can see that number has been steadily going down. That's the blue at the bottom. And then the light green, the extra payment for next fiscal year is budgeted at $8.4 million. It's going to make a tremendous difference in what it pays off. You can compare that to what we had last year of 6.9. So this is going to be a big change for us. We're hoping the market comes back.
So I hope that I always try to stop at this slide. I think it's critically important that we take a look at this slide and that we pay respect to what that number is of $8.4 million. We could do a lot of good with that money, and we are by paying our past debts that are still owed to this day. And my goal is to continue to add to that number. And hopefully one day, with the help of with a good economy, we can leave this city in a better position, not only for the residents, but for the employees, to make sure that they feel as secure and safe as possible.
Right.
But there's hopefully going to come a moment where we don't have to pay $8.5 million almost of additional payments to bring that to an acceptable percentage.
Right, absolutely. Now, the next slide, also, this is very good information. The bottom part of the bar shows that we are at 73.4% funded for our pension. And considering where we came from, if you go back to 2011, that's a tremendous stride forward for us. So we're looking to get to the 100% mark, but this is a good number for us. I mean, we've come a long way. The 25% reserve is almost back to normal. I believe we're owed about another $1.5 million between FEMA and CARES. We expect to get that money in. If at any time we feel that it's not going to come in, when we close the next fiscal year, we would absorb a piece of that. But at this point, we fully expect those numbers to come in. So we're just a drop under the 25% at this point.
That's great.
And that's it. Any questions for us?
I have a question. I was talking to somebody actually from another municipality, and for instance, what reminded me here was a footnote. Let me see where I can find it. It was on page 20. Average taxable value based on June 1, 2022 property valuations. You mentioned earlier, the state gives you an estimate, right? Between July 7th and July 14th?
Certain revenues, yes.
For certain revenues?
They're basically sales tax based. So we get revenue sharing and we get a half-cent sales tax. We get usually the low cost from gas tax, a better estimate comes in. Then also the trolley money. We don't have those estimates yet. So right now we've gotten 2 of the estimates in from the state, but there's still other ones outstanding.
It's the property tax estimate in yet?
The property tax that's from the property appraiser. That came in. That number came in July 1.
Okay, but the state revenue one, we don't have it yet?
We have some, but they're not in this budget because we found them out during July. The budget was already submitted, and that happens every year.
So is there usually can we say there's an average difference in what the number that we work within is versus the number that becomes the new total after the state revenue estimates?
It's rarely. I mean, it can change every single year. There's never a really solid trend. The only solid trend we have so far is the adjustment of the prior year's values. They usually go down by a certain small percentage because of the valuation board. But other than that, it's hard to tell. So we do our best. We usually, going into the July 1 book, we give you our best guess of what those state revenues would be without trying to overestimate it. And they are coming in higher, and we'll address the commission for the first budget hearing with recommendations of where those monies should be going.
All right, so I just want to make sure we will take into account the actual numbers from
absolutely.
those state revenue
Absolutely.
before we finalize the budget.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. Any numbers that come in from July 1 until the first hearing will be considered in the first hearing. Any changes between the two hearings will be considered for the second hearing.
Okay. And I just want to make sure, because for my colleagues, you could have a situation, probably not a big deviation, but you could have a situation where you actually have more money than you're working with. I think that's happened to some cities before, right? Where they don't take that into account.
Well, I can tell you, in the year that they hired me, back in 2010, the July 1 property values sank compared to the June 1 property values. No, they did not. They have not done that for a while.
Yeah, forget the property value. I'm talking about the state.
Oh, the state typically goes up. We estimate so conservatively that we don't give it a chance to have to come down. There was one, I believe, 2 years ago where we overestimated on the communication services tax. But that's been sort of a downward trend as people were cutting in cable. Now it's starting to level off and possibly going up because there's so many streaming services that, yes, you cut your cable, but now you're subscribing to one service after the other. And it's, if you do it annually, it's $80 a year for each one of those. It starts coming back. So what I've found is that CST is starting to level off, And we'll see what happens. The state number is still not in yet. It's the one they have not given us.
And one last question. We had the initial estimate for Coral Gables was a 9.1% increase. Then it went up to 10.9%, right? For property value now.
No, it was 7.6 for June, and I think it's 11 or so for, just over 11 for July 1.
I thought it was 10.9. No, maybe I'm looking at something old. There's no opportunity or no subsequent revision, so I'm clear where it could go up even further for this year.
It's typically, again, when the Value Adjustment Board gets their hands on it, typically it goes down, never up above the July 1. We are expecting, like, for next fiscal year, there's a chance that there still may be an upswing in property values. It really depends on what happens with the economy.
Right.
And, there's talk of a recession. Where is that going to go? So we have to be very, very careful with how we apply our increased property taxes, because if there's a dropping next year, we have no choice. It goes away. That means a cut to the budget in some form or another. So we're going to be very conservative with the next go around of the budget for the first budget hearing.
Okay, thank you.
I have basically one question on the labor costs. For the open contracts that we have that haven't been voted on or finalized, how have you addressed that in the budget?
The only one right now that is not settled, I believe, is fire. All the others are settled, so we're within those contracts, and those adjustments are built into the budget right now.
Within whose ask number?
Within, sorry?
Depending on which way the vote goes with fire.
No, fire is, we have funds set aside for what the city can afford, just being held, but there's no settlement there. So again, there's no cost of living increase for the fire staff at this point. I mean, once they settle, and I can't talk about that here because that's a collective bargaining issue.
I just want to know that we reserved for that.
Right now, we are prepared for a certain dollar amount, and that's all I can really say at this point. All the others, we have built those contractual agreements into the budget as it stands right now. Did I answer your question? Sort of.
Sort of.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll have more discussions before September.
I'm sure, yeah, we will.
Anything else, Commissioner?
What's going on with the Firehouse?
Okay, we never mentioned that, we should. So again, we're giving the commission an option right now. The Firehouse is $6.5 million, and we have put aside $450,000 for possible debt. It's built into the budget right now, and that will cover the debt service for that. We are trying our best to try and not go into debt, but I think the manager wants to talk about this. So we have a plan, and the manager can take this a little further.
We have a plan to see if we can potentially budget Phillips Park and the Firehouse. It deals with using some additional funds that we may be getting because of the increased property taxes to use at Phillips Park. And then it includes a $6.5 million loan, 15-year loan. We're also looking at the TDR issue, and we're looking at creating a potentially historical building fund that we could use to supplement our general fund for historical structures. For instance, the $750,000 required for the gondola building, and things that was operating would be operating funds for those historical buildings. So I've discussed it with finance, actually last week, for a change in what we're doing, and we will be bringing that up for potentially funding both.
So it's either, just to make sure I understood that correctly, it's either debt, which I'm gonna have to have a conversation with somebody over here.
It ain't gonna happen.
Or TDRs, or what?
It's
That
either
is one of the
debt
options.
or one project.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically, it's either debt or
Let me
one
give you a little roadmap, if I may.
No, so we don't have an answer, is the short.
Let me give you, I think we may have an answer. So
Oh.
I was speaking with a manager, and I'm willing to go into debt a little bit obviously as a result of what we have to address with the parking garage, because we have parking garage revenue that's gonna come in and fund that. So even though you already knew it, you're like, you know my position on debt, I think the whole commission has the same, I know the whole commission has the same position. Because our goal is, when it's over, is to leave the city in a better place. It's not to just do projects to look good, it's to leave the city in a better place, stronger than ever. The parking, the fire station, just like Phillips Park, is, it's unfair because Menendez wants both, and he views both as critically important. So do I, so do you, but I think we can find a roadmap to paying for those without having to go into debt. And that would be my biggest goal for this year. Federally, hopefully, we're working on, Naomi's working tirelessly after our visit to Washington to get all the letters from our leaders, both in the Senate and the House. And hopefully we can get some funding at the federal level that's significant for multiple projects. And I think that using the TDRs could be a route that could really deliver some relief.
But Mayor, I haven't had a chance to explain this to all of you yet, but the idea is to have the TDRs in a way compensate for the debt. So we need debt, but we also need TDR. So if we can get both, I think there's a plan that we discussed last Thursday. With modified notice, we took out the two items that dealt with the TDRs going to I guess to structures of high public importance and benefit, to going back to a fund that will help us with our general fund and help us pay for our debt. So I think we can look at this in a number of ways, and I think we have a new way of potentially funding both. Mayor, that may take care of your issue that I understand you don't want to go into debt, but if we have a fund that can help compensate for that, then it's something that we need to discuss.
And for example, the fire station is ready today. Phillips Park is not gonna be ready for potentially at a minimum a year. We gotta go into design, we gotta hire an architect, we gotta do a few different things. So if we can find ways to take care of, obviously, the fire station without getting into debt, that would give me less heartburn. And moving in Phillips in the same direction, but I understand if there's a mechanism that you're working on, we'll bring that forward when it's ready.
And look, we just got to get to a result.
Yeah.
My top priority has been, since I got here, to try to help fund parks. But let me be clear. We made a commitment on the Firehouse. We made a financial commitment already. So we're already pot committed. Not utilizing that property after paying that sum for it is basically from my view, allowing an asset to depreciate, because we're not planning on selling it. We made a commitment of those dollars because it was a life safety issue. So that has to be, for me, priority number one. I also think it'll probably end up being, not probably, I'm pretty sure it'll end up being less money than probably what Phillips Park will ultimately need. I could be wrong on that, we'll see. But it's got to get done. So I don't know if it's, whatever the solution is going to be, this is not something I'm going to continue to push off into the future. It's got to get done, and it's got to get done sooner than later.
So we're going to bring options to the table by the hearings. We've been just having discussions, and I know that, the mayor, the city manager has really been thinking very long and hard about some of these items, and we'll have options. Remember, the capital improvement plan is discussed at the second hearing. By that's the latest date. We'll have options because we have to publish the book.
Right.
So we're going to have some options for the commission. Right now, the option just in case fallback is that we have $450,000 set aside for debt if that's the only option the city can possibly take on. But there's further discussions to have, and 2.5 months before we have to really make the final decisions.
The amount that was mentioned a little while ago for the Firehouse, would that impact our bond rating? Do you anticipate that? That's because one area I definitely don't want to go
not
into.
that amount.
No, we have nothing that we will do nothing to really disturb our triple rating.
And it should be noted, and I don't know if that number you gave me, I doubt it includes it, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. The Firehouse is supposed to include a very small park on the north side adjacent to it.
That's part of the drawings, and it will be permitted together.
But does that number include that?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Right, that's the construction, is based on the construction.
It's construction for the fire, for the
park
entire,
as
for
well.
the entire project.
Okay.
And
So it's
for-
both, so.
Yeah,
And for the
Again,
record,
depending on costs, you know.
No, I
Again,
understand.
hopefully costs of the firehouse will come down.
Right.
Because the prices now are inflated.
Sure.
So we'll see what happens.
Vice Mayor, the plans are currently permitted together as one project.
for the record, I think the mayor stated a little while ago, I'm for both finding a way to get both done. They both serve the community in different ways, but they serve the community. And I kudos to you all for coming up for creative ways. And I think explaining it that these creative ways are manageable and they sort of fit within the realm of what, you know, we've tried to accomplish in the past. So I'm looking forward to having that come back to the commission, and hopefully we can find common ground and have both important projects funded.
Right.
We're
Any-
trying
any
to
and all
look at this new concept that may be financially neutral, not exactly.
Right.
any
And by the
also-
way, can we also, if my recollection serves me, you had come with an initial design that everybody felt was maybe a little too modern, you were gonna soften it.
We did do that, yes.
I don't think it came back to us.
Your comments were taken by the city architect and incorporated into the design. But we can bring it back if,
Yeah, I think,
if you wish. It's under permitting right now.
what I wanna be is as ready to go as we can be, you know?
We are currently permitting the project right now.
Yeah, well, like to see it too. And I'll mirror your comments. I mean, public safety is number one. I think anybody, any resident here would say that the firehouse is of preeminent importance to get off the ground. I love parks very much. I think it enhanced the value of our entire city, but also am mindful that we need to be careful.
And the good news, I think, I trust the administration to come up with options to do both.
But again, I don't want to be redundant. Let's find a way to deliver on Phillips Park. I think it's incredibly important for the commissioner, all commissioners, along with the vice mayor, public safety, with the fire station. But let's see if we can find a way, hopefully federally, if we get some money. Maybe we have to go back to the federal government and make a second trip. I don't have a problem doing that. But if we're able to do that, I would love not to take out any debt on that front.
We're working on that neutral solution. We haven't quite worked it out yet, but I think it looks promising.
Maybe we see an uptick next year in property values. Maybe we can fund a portion of Phillips Park along with the TDRs. We'll do some sort of funding strategy to figure out a way. And we can start paying for the planning and the design over the next year.
And I'm hoping for some relief on the escalation costs, Mayor, by the beginning of the quarter next year, and that can help us also.
And by the way, I have no issues. I'm ready to move forward, taking the mobility hub and the fire station. If we got to go to hard bid, we have the team. Again, it's a little bit more difficult, but I'm willing to take it to hard bid, and I'm seeing the market shift already. Material costs are going down. You saw they mentioned last week that copper is on the way down, so is wood. So we will see a change. I think patience, if we're patient, I think it's on our side. But I'm more than willing to take it to a hard bid with qualified, competent.
Mayor, we are planning on hard bidding the fire station.
Okay. All right, I look forward to it.
And hopefully, those escalation costs, as you mentioned, will be a help at the first quarter of next year when the project's ready to go.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss today? One of the things that
You have a resolution, Mayor?
But before we move the resolution, I wanna, before we solidify the millage rate, one of the things that I want staff to work on, please, I think this is important to all of us in the commission. I'd like to hear the sentiments from my colleagues, and that is continuing to push our endeavors in the traffic calming and sidewalks area. Let's focus in on that. If we need to find more funding for staff, I can see Public Works in the back. If we need to find more funding for them, more hands on deck, more employees, more consultants, this is something, again, that will help redefine who we are as a city, our walkability, our safety, our ADA. We need to focus in on that. I know we want beautification. I know I'm pushing Dina smiles. I know we want landscaping. I know we want shade trees. I know we want fire stations for public safety. But I think that's something that you're not a true city. Obviously, you're not safe, but You're not a true city if you can't walk in the streets in a comfortable way. And we need to figure that out. So think about it and see what else. And I'd like to hear from Public Works in the next budget hearing to see what do we really need? How much money do we really need to finish up certain projects that are pending in the next year or two?
Yeah, there were also some matters, Mayor, that we covered with FDOT, such as a sidewalk on Blue Road, not Blue Road, but Bird Road. And we should follow up on that and see if we can urge them to put that sidewalk in.
Along with the traffic calming is a major issue. You know, if we're able to at least slow the traffic down,
Right.
I think people, they have a different opinion on their day. You know, people are less stressful when you're able to slow traffic down. So everybody wants us to push different phases of the 5-phase project ahead of others. Obviously, we can't do that, but I'd like to really understand the budgeting and what do we need, what do we have left, how much more money do we need maybe next year to push through one of the phases and get it done. Okay. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion.
It's a resolution of the City Commission setting a tentative millage rate of 5.559 mils for the fiscal year 2022-23 annual operating budget to be submitted as a preliminary disclosure to Miami-Dade County Property Appraiser.
We have a motion from
Second.
Commissioner Menendez and a second from Commissioner Anderson.
Yes,
Commissioner Anderson,
yes.
Commissioner Force,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mena, Commissioner Menendez,
Yes.
Mayor Lago.
Yes. Again, before we adjourn, thank you to staff. This is made possible because of your hard work and your leadership, and we're eternally grateful. Thank you and have a wonderful day, and we'll see each other here at 5:01. Thank you.